I am Yolanda, author of I Am Yolanda, A Journey of Hope. Yolanda is a young, single black mother to two sons, Kwame 7 years and Cassius 5. This story tells the tale of one woman's journey as she navigates her way through life. Courageously, Yolanda shares personal details of her childhood and upbringing, giving context to how this has shaped her character, her mindset, her beliefs, and her parenting. The journey shares details of judgments and prejudice faced by Yolanda, inflicted by professionals, and the impact as a result. Yolanda passionately discusses self-doubt, self-love, and what she refers to as imperfect parenting. The story is one which shows how even through the worst circumstances, there is indeed hope. When I talk about the book, one of the things that I say to people is, in sharing my truth, it took an awful lot for me to do that in the book and on the pages of that book. Therefore, I felt like when I titled the book, it had to be called I Am Yolanda, because I had to stand behind everything I was saying in an unapologetic, unashamed type of way. It took me a great deal to pour my heart out onto those pages. It took me years before I did it, many years. So when I did it, it needed to count. So I Am Yolanda, A Journey of Hope. It will take you through a journey, take you through and across a path that shows you that sometimes even in the darkest days, it does get better. The book is very important to me for so many reasons. It's because of the many issues that I cover in the book. They were issues that from the outside, most people didn't know I was going through those things. And when we look at how mental health affects people now, one of the things we see is this silent pain, this invisible illness. And I think when I was going through some of those difficulties, that's where I was. In the book, I talk about depression, but I don't talk about depression as in I say I was depressed. I talk about the impact. I talk about the effect. I talk about how it spilled into other areas of my life, because I think it's important to raise these issues. I know and believe that when we share, we give someone else hope, we give them strength, we give them inspiration. And for me, right in the book, I had to do that. Bearing my truth and bearing it as transparent as I did and as I have was simply because I need other people to know they're not on their own. And that was my intention. For me, I'm a mum, first and foremost. So I'm a mum and I'm a mother of 3 + 1. I say +1 because I also have a stepson, so I have a bonus son as well. But the book tells you of my journey when it was just myself and my 2 sons. When I was a single parent and when things were really challenging. I was a young mum, and being a young mum meant that I experienced certain challenges and certain judgments. And those judgments had an impact on me. They had an impact on how I viewed myself, the way I saw myself. In writing that book, I'm writing it because I know that very often as single parents, we tend to get quite a hard, what's the word? We get branded quite harshly for it. No one looks at why we're single parents. They look at the fact that we're single parents. No one looks at the situation at which your kids may have come into this world. They just look at the fact you have 1 child or 2 children. And that was me. I felt like people were always waiting for me to fail. And so that meant that when I needed help sometimes, I didn't ask for help. I didn't go for help. I isolated myself. And again, this is where I talk about the mental health aspect on how that made me feel and what my children experienced because of my own feelings as well. Do you know what I mean? So for me, I have to give strength to single parents, to single mums, even though I'm no longer a single mum. But I will never forget where I'm coming from, because when I look around, those judgments still exist for mums. And in sharing my story, hopefully as women as well, we get to come together. We learn to support one another and to be slow to judge, quicker to support. Our current climate is one of huge divide, for various reasons. When I think about the book and some of the issues that I've raised in the book, I was asked the question once, is this book about race? And I said, no, this is not a book about race, but race has everything to do with this book. And I say that because, again, as a Black parent, as a Black mother, the story unfolds very differently to that of perhaps a Caucasian mother. And that's in no disrespect to the challenges that another mother might feel. It's just the fact that there are challenges and there are battles that we have to fight as Black mothers because we are Black mothers. There are battles that we have to fight because of negative expectations because of our children. Because of those battles, because of those expectations, I had to fight battles with professionals and not physically fight. And this is where the book is such an eye-opener. We fight these battles on a daily and think nothing of it because it's what we expect. It's because of what we've come to expect. But it's not acceptable. One of the things, I share a story in the book where I was told that I used inappropriate language to my son, who was 8 at the time. And that was because I expected him to know what the word soluble meant. It sounds funny, but I give you my word, I sat at a table of approximately 8 to 10 professionals, and the fact that I expected my son to know what soluble meant when he was doing his homework from school, it went against me at that boardroom. That went against me. Now, if we are looking for demonstrations of discrimination, then that's one of them for me. Because I still will not accept that my expectation for my son is something that you should judge me for. And I know I'm not alone. I know that very often we are told things about our children that we deem to be untrue. Sometimes we fight, sometimes we think we don't have a voice. We do have a voice. And I want that every reader who reads my book finds their voice. If not for any other reason, then our children are our future. And raising our children according to our expectations is not a crime. I warn readers before they start reading that have a box of tissues handy, because the book is heart-wrenching. I remember that when I wrote that book, there were periods and chapters at which I took a break. I had to remove myself from, because even I was welled up with tears. Because in writing it, I took myself right back to that moment, and you feel it. So as a reader, there are moments in that book that you really feel. There are moments in that book, I've been told, where mothers look at their own children and say, oh my gosh, I've done that. I've said that. This sounds just like me. One of the frequent messages I received, since the book has been published, was the fact that people said, you said things that I think, but I would never have said that. That's my job. My job is to say those things unashamed so that other people feel free. My job is to talk about the things that we go through as women that we don't share because we feel that sometimes in sharing that, we're weak. We're scared of how that is going to impact us. And again, that comes down to judgments. But for me, I wanted to do all of that. I wanted to share those most intimate thoughts on paper so you can see that our mind does work like that sometimes. But this is how we combat those negative thoughts. This is how we combat oppression. This is how we combat judgment. This is how we raise our children. In my case, it was my sons, but this is how we fight for our children, and this is how we raise them according to our own standards. Parenting is important to me. My sons are important to me. And as a black mother, it is important to me that I raise strong, emotionally intelligent black men. In order to do that, I have to be open too. I have to be open to them. I have to be open to what is out there, but I've got to be willing as well. it's hard to be willing sometimes because society doesn't necessarily give us a hug and support us. If we start sharing, then we start coming together and then we support us. Because really, the community that we need, the support that we need is already here. We just need to have the necessary conversations. My book can be seen as a very lengthy conversation. I am Yolanda, the author of I Am Yolanda, A Journey of Hope.